The point of this webinar is to go over some advanced surveillance setup. And the main focus of this is actually going to be surveillance CMS and setting up a fully modular surveillance system using Synology's surveillance station. Another side note in this whole webinar is going to actually be about the DVA 3219. It's one of those targeted devices that we just recently released, and it allows you to do deep video analytic tasks on up to 4 streams. So it's going to be very handy for specific use cases where you need to monitor things extra closely that in a way that motion detection can't capture. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move on. So on the agenda today, we have hardware best practices in surveillance CMS. In hardware, we're going to go over an overview of the selection of your hardware for deployments. Under best practices, we're going to go through file system, recording, and playback considerations that you're going to want to make as you utilize surveillance station. Last, but certainly not least, we're going to go over surveillance CMS and how to set up the host for this, the recording server, and its failover servers as well. So if any one of those goes, any of the recording servers goes down, the failover can stand in and begin recording without losing any footage and that kind of thing. So under surveillance hardware, what we're going to start on first is actually the NVR selection and how we're going to choose the correct surveillance NVR. Next, we're going to go over some targeted devices, and these are product families tailored for surveillance. But I wanted to stress multiple times in this webinar that all NAS can be an NVR, and they can all Synology NAS can be an NVR for surveillance station. These are just devices that are specifically engineered for those surveillance deployments, such as that you can create a video wall and that kind of thing. Lastly, in hardware, we're going to talk about camera compatibility and the testing methods we use and different setups, both user-defined and even an analog setup for those aging systems as well. So whenever you're selecting an NVR for your deployment, again, all NAS can function as an NVR. So even the small little 2-bay units can be an NVR for a small retail environment or something like that. I believe the 218 can do quite a few cameras, tens of cameras actually. So another thing you might want to do is use the Synology NVR selector tool. It's a handy tool on our website that will help you choose the right NVR for you. But what you're going to want to do is pay special attention to the total FPS as you increase resolution. So you might find that one product or product family can handle up to 100 cameras. However, that amount actually decreases as you increase your resolution to, let's say, 4K or 5 megapixels or something like that. So you'll be able to utilize less cameras with that because the total FPS drops because the video resolution is increasing dramatically. That being said, up to 100 cameras can be used on a single high-end unit like an FS unit or one of our XS Plus units as well. And if you ever need to add additional cameras to the system past 100 up to tens of thousands, then you can utilize surveillance CMS to add additional recording servers to the system. So on to targeted devices, as you can see, all NAS, again, can be NVRs. These are just specialized units. The DVA 3219 is the first of its kind in our product line, and it can do deep video analytics of up to 4 tasks total because it leverages an NVIDIA 1050 Ti graphics card inside of the device to help analyze those videos effectively. The other device that we have that is specifically tailored to surveillance station and surveillance in general is Visual Station. These are basically little mini PCs that are VESA mountable. And all they do is allow you to do a surveillance live view and playback. And the use case here is to set up a video wall. You may all imagine the typical security guard sitting in front of multiple monitors and being able to view multiple streams at once. That with Visual Station, you're going to be able to set that up in a very easy and intuitive way. Then we have the NVR 1218. This is the only one in our line that actually is named an NVR, and it's specialized for that. But again, all NAS can be an NVR. These are really for kind of an energy efficient all-in-one surveillance solution that would be great for kind of a small retail environment or something like that, because it does have HDMI on the back of it, so you can have it connected to a video monitor to do some viewing there as well. Next, we have camera compatibility. All of our internal testing is done at Synology HQ in Taiwan. And so that's why we're compatible with so many cameras. We have a dedicated team there that works to add in these cameras into our environment and make them function on surveillance station. We are also OnViv compatible for generic setup or user-defined setup. So even if your camera is not specifically on the compatibility list, but it's OnViv compatible, it can be added to surveillance station. That being said, there's no guarantee that every single feature of that camera will be functioning 100% in OnViv. It may or may not. Next, we have analog cameras. And this is really great, especially for those aging NVR systems that are using BNC connectors and 2-conductor wire, that kind of thing. With a compatible video server, which you can find on our compatibility list, you're able to actually do a digital conversion for those so that even if it's a fully analog system, you can still use Synology as a drop-in replacement for those. And again, new cameras are being added every release and update for Surveillance Station as a device pack. And so make sure you're up to date on Surveillance Station. So here we are fading into the DVA 3219. I just wanted to show you real quick Package Center. Unlike the UC 3200, which is iSCSI only, you'll notice that this is a fully featured NAS device. So once Package Center loads up here, you see you have access to all these great packages that you know and love with Synology. So just to show you, it's just a fully featured NAS as well. So now we're going to go into Surveillance Station because that's really the main use case for this device. When we load up Surveillance Station, we're going to just hop right into Deep Video Analytics. These other 4 kind of options for live view, timeline, IP camera, we're going to explore that a little bit more and hop into those a little bit later in the webinar. So we're just going to go ahead and click on Deep Video Analytics and set up a task for intrusion detection as well as no loiter zone. You'll notice we have 2 already created, but let's go ahead and go through the process of creating another one. And as you can see, the camera feeds load as well with the task. We're going to use this left camera here and go ahead and just name it Spot 1. So we're not going to do deep motion detection. That's really for rainy or windy days. So like the motion detection won't trigger based on a tree swaying or something. And we're not going to do people counting because ceiling mount is a requirement for people counting, and we don't have that here. But what we are going to do on this one is do intrusion detection and explore how to set that up in the UI itself. So here we are, we got that all set up, and we're going to go ahead and hit next. So as you can see, this top checkbox at the top is going to actually be the first thing you want to take a look at. You can have it trigger motion detection as well, and also tell it to categorize what it's seeing. It can tell if it's seeing people, transport, or animals. But the big one here is the day-night mode transition. If your camera can do it, it is best practice to use day-night mode scheduling, and then also mirror that scheduling using this filter mode here by using a specific time. If you can't do that on that camera, you can always just do the DVA filter, and that'll function just fine as well. We're going to go ahead and hit apply, and this is where you're going to define the perimeter that you want to take care of. As you can see, you get this line here, and you can manipulate these 3 dots to take the shape of the perimeter that you want to guard. We're just going to do a simple one across this courtyard here in between our 2 parking lots here. And we're going to do this as a 2-way direction here. So basically what that means is that it doesn't matter which side they enter that, they cross that line, they will still be detected and flagged as an intruder via motion detection. So that's pretty much all you have to do to set it up. You can go ahead and hit save. And what we're going to do is also set up one for no loiter zone because it's got a little bit of a different UI interface for setting that up as well. Go ahead and do no idle zone. Oops, forgot a name here. Let's go spot 2. Hit next. And go ahead and just click through the menus here. So now you're going to see you get something a little bit different. You get a rectangular shape by default, and you can create essentially just any polygon that you'd like to fill in the space that you want to kind of guard. And you can do this as an inclusive or exclusive zone. And also you can click anywhere in the middle of the line so that you can actually bend it to make the perfect shape for that environment. And you can even go a little crazy here, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to watch out for this courtyard here and go ahead and hit save. And then there you have it. So what we're going to do next is go into these events that have already been triggered and show you what this looks like for the intruder detection. So I believe we have about 89 events in this one. And so as you can see, it's already triggering another one. So we'll go down to this second one and go ahead and pop into it and show you what this looks like. once this loads up, you're going to see a gentleman walking across the screen, and you can see that the intrusion detection triggers with motion detection as well, that red box. As you can see, he's just crossing the park from one parking lot to the other. And if we look at another one, you can see there's a completely different gentleman walking a bit faster through that intrusion line, and he's also detected as well. And I also wanted to note here, you can also set your notifications to push to you either via email or also via text message, especially for these motion detections or intrusion detections. Pretty much any kind of alert in Surveillance Station can be pushed to your device. So that's about it for how you set up those deep video analytic tasks. They are very intuitive and easy to set up, and they are very handy if you have a parking spot or a fence line that you want to guard. It can do that in an intelligent way. So next, we're going to move on to Surveillance Station best practices, and we're going to talk about file system, viewing, and recording considerations. For file system, there's actually some trade-offs and considerations you have to make based on if you want to go to BTRFS or ext4. For viewing, there's a couple best practices for playback and live view as well that you're going to want to pay attention to, especially if you have a large amount of cameras in the deployment. For recording, you're going to want to, we have a couple settings and use cases for changing certain recording settings to make the recording run smoother and be more valuable to you if there is ever an issue that you need to use the recordings for. For BTRFS, you're going to see this is a bit of a departure from our rhetoric in previous webinars and whenever we talk about best practices for different packages. But I want to stress, since 8.2, BTRFS has been optimized for search for contiguous storage. In the past, it would allow for a greater amount of fragmentation, and so it would spend more time looking for that contiguous storage. But since Surveillance Station 8.2, this has been remediated a little bit. And so previously, you would almost always go with ext4 if it was dedicated NVR. But what's interesting about Surveillance Station is the data is utilized in a different way than normal packages in Synology, with a Synology NAS. So BTRFS self-healing is not required for videos because you're not changing and editing those videos on the fly like you would a normal file in File Station. So you don't really need that full self-healing. And in fact, if your disk utilization is high, you might want to create a new shared folder and make sure to disable checksum on that and have that be your recording location, because the checksum adds additional layers of metadata. So as that continuous stream of video is rolling through, it's trying to find contiguous storage. It's also checking against that checksum to make sure the data has good integrity, and that increases disk operations. So on top of all this, snapshots are not required since videos are not edited, and they're a little bit more of a resilient file. So if you have a dedicated unit, it may be better to go with ext4 because it's not required to have these checksums and this BTRFS file system for self-healing on this situation. Now, if it was a dual system, you want to at least make sure that some of those, maybe do independent disks on ext4 and have the rest of the system be BTRFS, so you can reap the benefits of snapshots and the like. For viewing and playback, you can view and manage camera streams from the web. So you can, just log in just like you would with any other DSM package and manipulate it from there. You can also use Visual Station units to view cameras and recording playbacks as well. And on top of all that, there's a mobile app called DSCam that allows you to view cameras remotely, as well as integrate your camera on your phone into Surveillance Station, so that if you're patrolling around, you can actually use your phone to take those videos. And if you see some nefarious actions, you can just pull out your phone and have it be recording directly to the NAS. This all being said, though, best practice is to use the desktop client instead of the web UI for viewing these camera streams. And this is not a knock on Surveillance Station. It is actually a limitation with HTML. And if you think about it, you have maybe 20 streams at possibly 4K running through your web browser. And that is something that HTML can't do very well because there is just so many high quality camera streams running through it. Whereas the desktop client is going to be using your PC's power to kind of, and leveraging that so that it can handle those streams a little bit better. So use the desktop client for viewing those streams and also for looking at recordings, and Visual Station as well if the desktop if there can't be a desktop computer at that location as well. So next on recording settings. So take into account your camera usage. So you have to know why you're using this camera. Are you just trying to get a view of the whole area, or are you looking to get faces or license plates or something like that? You need at least 10 FPS for capturing faces indoors. Honestly, it should be a little bit higher than that, at least 15% and more, because people walk pretty quickly and they shake their head back and forth, look side to side frequently whenever they're walking down a hallway. So if you have anything less than 10 FPS, you're going to probably only you might get one good face shot, maybe two. But if you increase FPS, you have a better opportunity to grab those shots of that person's face that is intruding. So for large deployments, you really should use H.264 and really be leaning towards using H.265. Honestly, H.264, if you have many cameras and you're retaining for 90 days, you're going to be looking at over a gigabit of bandwidth needed and almost a petabyte of space needed as well. But with H.265, you're going to greatly reduce your bandwidth overhead and also reduce your storage space. So it's going to save you a lot of money on that storage infrastructure if you go with H.265. And there's just better performance all around. Lastly, you want to look at custom keyframe interval as well. So you can do this to, good rule of thumb is to equal FPS, or even do double if you know there's going to be a lot of motion in the shot. But if your camera does support it, go ahead and do dynamic. It will see if it's just like a blank hallway, and it will reduce that keyframe so that it isn't kind of acting like it has a lot of motion there. And if it does increase in motion, it'll be able to dynamically change that one as well. So we're going to talk about the CMS configuration as well. We're going to go through architecture, management, and licenses and how they're managed. Architecture, we're going to talk about setting up a modular system and how that architecture looks like. In management, we're going to talk about how you would monitor client deployments. And in licenses, we're going to talk about in failover how those licenses are migrated and that kind of thing as well. Here we are on a diagram I created for this surveillance CMS setup. As you can see, we have 3 different levels here. We have the endpoint device, which is your cameras, and those are recording to surveillance station at your client site. As you can see, we have a surveillance CMS host, a recording server, and a failover server. It is best practice on your surveillance CMS host to only have 1/3 of the cameras it can have total. So if it can do 100 cameras, you should be looking at around 30 cameras realistically. If you can do 75, we're looking at around 25 cameras on the device. That's because it has to manage all of the action rules and other event tracking, as well as managing the servers and failover as well. So you want to make sure you don't overload that system with too many cameras. And if you needed to add additional cameras, add more recording servers, because you can go right up to the max with those recording servers. And as you can see, the failover server is a third standalone unit. It is a completely separate unit here, and it's designated as the failover server. It does not handle any recordings unless it's failed over 2. During failover, it will take over the IPs and the configuration from the recording server it's assigned to, and take over recording if there's ever an IP protocol error or if the server goes down. Now, the big moment here is the fleet management level, that top level. You can see we have a regular CMS host, a standard Synology CMS host, not surveillance. A tidbit here is that for recording servers and failover servers and just any NAS in general, they can only be paired to one CMS host. So for that recording server and that failover server, they're already paired to a surveillance CMS host. That being said, the surveillance CMS host can still be a slave unit to the regular CMS host that might be at your home office. And through that, you're able to manage that surveillance CMS host, even though it's a CMS host in its own right. And then lastly, you can back up your surveillance footage to the cloud of your choosing using Hyper Backup, or you can also use Cloud Sync as well. In management, you can view all cameras from one main surveillance CMS host that we're going to see in a little bit. And you can also use regular CMS to monitor that surveillance CMS host and even drill down into the device and drill down with your surveillance CMS profile. And then whenever you hit that main DSM page to log into with your CMS profile, you're able to open surveillance station still and view those cameras. It's handy in the fact that if there's a camera down, you can pop into the client's site and know which camera is down without even having to ask them. So you can also set up action rules as well for users. You can set up a manager or spectators, because the manager may be able to handle all of the IP camera integrations, managing servers and the like, but a spectator might be a front office staff that is only allowed to view certain cameras. And if you have a restricted area that even they can't look into, you can block them from viewing those cameras. And finally, you can set up action rules like patrol and auto pan during the failure of a camera. And so it adds a little bit of redundancy there, in that if the camera gets disconnected or goes down, you can have it patrol back and forth. And that might suffice in certain cases whenever you're waiting for a new camera to arrive to replace that one that failed. Next, we have licenses. Licenses are perpetual. So once you buy them, they're yours forever. And licenses are migrated during failover. It would be pretty absurd if we had you have multiple licenses lying in wait on the recording server. Synology would never do that to you. So that's why they are migrated over during failover, and during failback, the licenses are brought back across. So you don't have to have extra licenses unused and in the wings waiting for that failover moment. You do not have to do that. So let's go ahead and dive into surveillance CMS and really how to set this whole environment up and everything we just talked about as well. So as we fade in here, we're on our main sales demo lab. We're going to open up CMS, but I just wanted to show you it's an application center. It's already running, but you want to click all on the left here and make sure surveillance CMS is installed and running, and the CMS failover service is running as well. Otherwise, the failover won't work and the failover option won't be available. So open up CMS, and we're going to just go through some of these settings. Recording and failover server we're going to touch on in a minute, but in failover setting, you can enable automatic failover and have it disconnect after a 1 minute interval. But take a look at these other checkboxes, because you can set other thresholds as well. Like if the volume is crashed or degraded, you can have that cause a failover. And likewise, if there's any issues with packages as well, you can have that trigger this failover as well. We can just set it to all abnormalities and even volume degraded, so it's very sensitive. You can also have it fail back with the recordings and snapshots taken during failover, and have it automatically fail back whenever the recording server comes back up. So that way you retain your data that you create, and you should be good to go after that. So let's go ahead and save. In migration, this is where you can change which camera settings and video recordings are on which server, so you can migrate them across. And in advanced is where you're going to set up the host, recording, or failover server mode. Our sales demo will be our host server, so we're going to leave this alone and just go ahead and exit out of this one. These recording and failover server modes are going to be for the DVA and the demo server 2, respectively. So over in demo server 2 is going to be our failover server. Likewise, we're going to open up CMS and go ahead and go to it directly to advanced and turn it into a failover server. Once we hit save, it's going to tell us that we're going to refresh the web page, and some data is going to be removed off the surveillance station device because it's going to become a slave unit to the surveillance CMS host. When we hit OK, it's going to reboot the web server. So in a few moments, you're going to lose some icons on the left here, and you're going to be greeted with a view that only has the surveillance CMS icon as well as the help icon on top of it. So once this reloads, as you can see, it removes some of those icons because now it is fully managed by that surveillance CMS host. So you wouldn't really do anything in this view any longer. So let's go back to the main host and open up CMS once more and add in this failover server by hitting add under the failover server tab. You can go ahead and name it, type in its IP address, and do your username as well and password. And once we're done typing out this password, you can also test the connection, make sure you have a green check mark, and then you should be good to go to pair it. Finish. And as you can see, it's configuring right now. And in just a few moments, it'll be ready and lying in wait. But as you can see, it doesn't have any protected server right now because we haven't added a recording server yet. So it's already enabled by default. And you can see that it's ready to go at this point in time. And we're going to go ahead and move over to the DVA 3219 to set that up as the recording server. Once again, you're going to go back into CMS and go ahead and go straight to advanced and make sure it's a recording server mode. And you can also prevent users on this recording server from making changes to it. And what that's really for is if you want it to kind of respond like it did with the failover server with very little icons in that view. So now what we're going to do is go back to the main host unit, sales demo, and go over to recording server and hit add here as well. It's just like before, but with the IP address of the DVA. And you want to make sure you get your IP address right. So I'm going to go ahead and double check real quick. Yep, .147. So that should be fine for this. And we're going to go ahead and hit our username and password as well. Test the connection. Green check mark means you're good to go. And this is why we did failover first, because you can select the failover server directly rather than re-editing the recording server later down the line. And you can also prevent other CMS hosts from pairing with this recording server and prevent users from making changes with it as well. Now, as you can see, now it says the DVA is locked. No one can edit it. And it's also protected by that failover server. If we go into IP camera here, you can see that we have now all the cameras in this environment ready to go. These two cameras were added from before. You can see we only have 3 local hosts, but you can see we have these 2 DVA cameras already added in. Likewise, if you go to live view, you can see that it pops up 2 other cameras now that are part of the DVA environment. As you can see, the one on the left here is the one that we use that perimeter on. And so you can view all of your camera feeds from that one main surveillance CMS host. And one last thing here, you don't have to just view every single camera at once. You can set up different viewing profiles so that you can see a different set of cameras based on your designation with that as well. So you can really tailor that to your specific needs and what you need to monitor specifically. Next, what we're going to do is show you what the failover looks like. And for this, we're going to do a manual failover. As you can see, it's starting to fail over, and you're going to see an alert here on the bottom as well once it's done with the failover, telling you that you need to address something with the system because something is amiss. As you can see, you get this blue alert along the bottom, and that's telling you that you need to go take a look at certain things. And also, it'll prompt you in the all status. It'll show failover. Under failover server, it says failed over, and there's also a failed over tab here. So you really can't miss it that it's in a failed over state. Likewise, in live view, you can see that it is failing over and it's activating those cameras with the licenses, and we should be able to view those cameras shortly. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and fail back. Normally, if you had to replace the server, you would replace the protected server with this button. But since we did a manual failover, we're going to go back to recording server and hit stop failover. Go ahead and just hit the checkbox and yes, and it will begin pulling back those camera feeds. We're going to jump ahead a little bit while it does that and move on to those user account kind of access privileges here. So once this pops back up, we'll bounce back into live view and show you that the cameras are back up. But if we go into user, you're going to see that we already have a spectator here, and she is going to be able to only view certain types of cameras. But as you can see, the failback is already occurring. And just in a few moments, we're going to be able to pop back over into live view and show you what's going on. But we're going to set up different privilege profiles here. And real quick, let's go back and look at live view. As you can see, once this comes up, all 5 cameras are back up and running, just like before. So under manager, you're going to see that this is going to be the manager of a system, and they pretty much have access to everything, but you can restrict that even if you wanted to. But they'll have access to servers, all the cameras, speakers, and map layouts. But if you go to spectator, you can lock down what servers they have access to and what cameras they can view. So again, if you have like a restricted area or sensitive information in a certain spot, you can lock down like the front office staff, for example, from being able to look into that. And that's a pretty handy thing if you have multiple people accessing your system at different levels of authority. So what we're going to do next is talk about some action rule stuff. But first, we're going to set up the PTZ rule. So we're going to open up IP camera. And we're going to go straight down to the bottom. And for this AMCREST, we're going to set it up for the garage camera to patrol back and forth. So we're going to go into PTZ control here. And as you can see, we've set up a couple locations. So you set preset locations like garage. So if we double click that, you can see it shows the garage. And then if we go to pavilion, you can see it shows like the pavilion out there and also the other parking lot. So whenever we set up a patrol rule, it'll patrol between these two locations at the interval we specify. So after you create these two preset positions, you can go into patrol and set up your rule as well. So here you would click on these presets and add them into the included presets and go ahead and name the whole situation and then hit this plus button to add it in. But we've already done that with this fail patrol option here with these included presets already added in. So what we're going to do is set up an action rule next that will actively patrol these two presets if the camera fails. So what it will do is from this garage where that car is going in, it'll move over to this pavilion over here to see that external parking lot, just in case this camera that you can see the reflection of goes down. So we're going to go ahead and head out and go over to action rule as well to show you what that will look like. So as we go into action rule, what we're going to do is make sure you really know. We're going to hit add first, but make sure you know what cameras you're going to be talking about. So for here, we're going to just name it failed camera or fail over, whatever you want to do. And you want to make sure that you know the camera that you're talking about. So we're going to do this local host camera and talk about the outdoor camera. And just to double check, make sure you look at your live view, or rather go ahead into IP camera as well to take a look at that to make sure you got the correct one selected. So you could go into a live view, but we're going to actually just go ahead and go into IP camera. And you can see that we're going to be focusing on the generic Amcrest one, the third one down, as well as the outdoor camera, because that's the garage one, and the outdoor is that outward facing one. So we're going to leave the event one be action, the outdoor one rather than Amcrest, and have it be camera disabled because I want to show you how specific these rules are. So we'll get back to that in a second. So we're going to have the action rule be actually the camera generic Amcrest will be the one that's moving, and have that do a move based on a patrol that we've set in the PTZ settings, that fail event that we did. So now what we're going to do is set up how many times it goes through this and how many seconds it does this as well. So that you can have this happen for quite a long time while you procure another camera or get someone out there to fix the connection issue or what have you. Let's go ahead and do 10,000. You can do all the way up to 86,000. So we're going to have our return position be garage, since the generic Amcrest original position is garage. So we want it to always return to there after everything's said and done. We want this to happen all the time, just in case something goes down at night. And there you have it. So now what we're going to do is actually go ahead and unplug this outdoor camera on the top left here and show you what this alt camera on all the way to the right with those vehicles rolling through, what happens when we do this failover here. You can see it's going to go right and then left back to the garage and be able to patrol both areas very easily. So 1 second here while we go ahead and unplug that other camera and show you what that all looks like. As you can see, the camera's off now, and we had an alert that says the camera's actually disconnected. So remember, we did disabled as the camera, and it is not moving. That's because we have specific rules, and so we have to, I strongly urge you to check the guide on our knowledge base to learn the definitions of these rules so this doesn't happen to you whenever something needs to be failed over. As you can see, connection was lost here. So what you actually want to do is edit this from what we set it to before. It's already enabled, as you can see. And you don't have to change anything in history or advanced. But what you really want to do is go to edit and go ahead and go into the action rule once more, or actually rather the event, and go ahead for this outdoor camera, go ahead and change it to the actual camera connection lost rather than anything else. So again, you can see the camera's disconnected. So it's a different definition than if the camera's disabled by right-clicking and disabled it. So go ahead and go to connection lost here. And then as you can see, once we hit save and close out of this, it's going to immediately start patrolling back and forth. So I strongly urge you to look at those action rule definitions so that you get those right the first time. And as you can see, it's going to patrol back and forth at the interval we selected. So you can view the garage as well as the outer parking lot as well. So what we're going to do here is actually go ahead and disable this rule because we don't really need it. And it's just for, demo purposes. We don't really need this for our environment. So we're going to go ahead and disable this and go ahead and show you another portion of this demo. one last little tidbit here that is helpful if you're trying to monitor your clients' deployments. Here we are in beast mode, everybody's favorite. What we're going to do is go ahead and go to regular CMS here. If you haven't downloaded it, go ahead and download it in Package Center. So go to Central Management System here. And as you can see, when we hit server, you're going to see that we have Sales Demo, that main surveillance CMS host, already added, just like we mentioned in that diagram. We can have this surveillance CMS host paired to another one that is like your fleet management device. So go ahead and just hit connect. And we're going to start drilling down with our CMS profile into the client's NAS. And you'll see it drops right into the main menu of DSM. And then we can still just go ahead and click on surveillance station and then drill down further into there. And really the use case here is if the client has a down camera, you don't have to have them do the investigation. Some technician at your home office can go ahead and look into the device from there. So as you can see, we're in that client's NAS, their main menu here, their desktop screen in DSM. And we're going to go ahead and go into menu and open up surveillance station on the client's NAS through our CMS host profile. Now that this is up, we're going to go ahead and go into live view as before. And what you're going to notice is that we have a, we're going to be dropping right into that same environment. That one camera is going to be down, and we're going to have 4 cameras that are up, just like before. So as this loads, you're going to see that is that same exact environment. As you can see, this is going to be very handy if you don't want technicians going out on site, or if one of your clients isn't the most technically savvy out there, so that you can still monitor and look in. So that about wraps it up for today. I just wanted to personally thank everyone for tuning into these webinar series this year so far. It's meant a lot, and we're happy to have you on as the Synology team. For business users, once more, if you have product questions, system design questions, or specification questions, feel free to reach out to us at the email at the top there. And of course, if you need a resale referral or a recommendation, we can always speak very highly of our partners. Resellers, if you need a partner registration, let us know. If you register with us, you get pre-sale support and product training like this webinar, but of course, they'll be more tailored to your needs and to your team. So join us for our next webinar, Thursday, January 30th, back on our regular scheduled programming, the last Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks once more for tuning into Synology. Happy holidays, have a happy new year, and we'll see you next time.